Hello and welcome to Backlinking, the PKM podcast. In today's podcast episode, I think this will be a shorter one because there is just so many things I have to cover and so many videos I have to film before taking summer vacation in a couple of weeks. But in this backlinking episode, we are talking about the journey to finding your productivity applications. As you might know, if you've followed me for a while, back in I think it was around January, I spent a little bit of time finding the right apps in December. My system fell apart in January, and from January to July I promised myself that I would do a lot. I was about to say a whole research, but a lot of research and find applications that actually not only fitted my workflow, but they also would fit my life at the moment, and I would enjoy using them. And I've tested out a bunch from SpaceDuck to Squintle to By Design. I have purchased lifetime plans. I have uh, paid a lot of different subscriptions. I tested my mind at some point. I've tried one application, I've tried having multiple different applications, I've tried utility apps, and I have figured out my system. And I will do a whole video on the apps I'm using, but I will mention some in this podcast episode as we go. But this episode is more about the journey to finding those applications, because I think that is also really important. So, for the last couple of years, as I've had this YouTube channel, my life has changed a lot. I went from being a student and running a clothing brand, which I co-founded, to not doing any of those because I'm now in a day job and I have this YouTube channel. So my life has changed, and in between there, I worked as a freelancer. So the last 2, 3 years, my life has changed a lot, which means that the things I've needed from my productivity applications, they've changed. So it made sense to change applications as often as I did. Probably not as often, but it made sense to change them every time my life situation changed. But as I'm now getting older, I'm 26, I've settled down a bit more. I'm not saying that you should settle down at 26, but as someone who likes to do the same things at the exact same time every single day, I like a quote unquote boring life. Uh, Settling down and just figuring out how you want to live your life and doing mostly the same things every single day is amazing. And that means that my productivity applications now, they only need to adapt to that one way of living life, instead of having to change off my system every time my life changed. um and that was really important for me to figure out. I think to figure out that now I can stick with or I should stick with a few applications, and also it made it easier to do the research around what do I exactly need. So there are a few things I would need in a productivity application, or a set of productivity applications. So I need great task management. That is probably the most important thing for my day job. I need to be able to manage my tasks, and I need to be able to visually see my workload. I think that is the most important thing in my productivity system. I need to visually see how much I've taken on, because I tend to take on too much and forget how much I actually have to do. So something like a timeline view, for example, is really important to me. It might not be for everyone, and probably it isn't for anyone else than me, but for me, it is super, super important. So that is the first thing I really needed. Apart from that, daily planning abilities, being able to drag things onto my calendar to do time blocking, that is important to me in a task management application. In my note-taking app, I needed to have a few features. The main one is that I really like backlinking. I've been back and forth on this. Do I actually need it? Is it a fancy feature? And I have decided that the problem isn't necessarily the features, it is the fact that I don't spend enough time with my note, which means that now I have actually gone ahead and I've paid for Readwise and Readwise Reader because it actually helps me read more. And with that, I also want backlinking because I want to spend time connecting different ideas. So that has been really important to me because I have this goal of using my notes to be more creative. Like my note taking app shouldn't be a graveyard of ideas and things I've read and things I've come across, which I think happens all too often with most people, but especially I've experienced that a lot. It isn't like a bookmarking tool where I put everything that might be interesting sometime in the future. My note taking app should be a place where things are connected, where I go to find ideas or to work on ideas. So that has been really important to me. I've been back and forward on whether or not I want a visual note taking app or not. I actually have landed on the fact that I don't care that much. But one thing I need from my note taking app is basic project management abilities. And that is because I do this YouTube channel, I do um, my Medium blog, I have a couple of other projects going on. So I need like a basic project management. Databases, for example, would be enough, but I also don't need too much customizability because then I will end up doing too much customization instead of work. And all of these things are things I've figured out. And the reason for me talking about all of this is because these might be things you should figure out as well if you've struggled with app hopping. So now we've covered, the last thing we covered was the databases stuff, and that is, as I said, because of the YouTube channel mainly and social media stuff. And I also, in the future, at some point, want to take those things into a separate like project management tool because I am hoping that uh, at some point I will be able to hire some help, especially with the YouTube video editing. And that is something I am considering, and then I will have to move it into another application. So the note-taking app also needs to be able to sit alone without the project management stuff, because I'm thinking of like hiring in the next year or so, and I promised myself to at least not switch applications for the next 365 days, especially the main applications, which is note taking, task management, and calendar. Sometimes a lot of people have like task management and calendar in the same place. But I've tried or I've decided not to change my main applications. I also have utility applications, like I am currently paying for Raycast for the AI stuff, but I might change that to Dia because I spend a lot of time in my browser anyway. So minor things like that, that is actually the only thing I am not sure of. More about that in the upcoming videos. But that is something I might change up, like minor things like that. I might change up, but note taking, especially, I won't change. And task management, I won't change. I'm not using a calendar app, or actually, that's wrong. I'm using multiple calendar application. I use Apple Calendar, I use Google Calendar. It depends on what device I'm on. I use Outlook Calendar. But all of them are like integrated together, so I have all of my calendar on all of my applications. So Google Calendar has it all, has all of my main ones. I have in iCloud Calendar, or I think it's called iCloud Calendar, iCal. I have all of my calendars in there. I think I also have all of my calendars in my Outlook app. So calendar applications are quite easy to change up because you just hook up your calendar to a new application. But I don't use a calendar app that much. I mainly use the task management application to look at my calendar. But that is also something that you need to figure out. Like, if you are someone that has a lot of meetings and have to have a lot of like meeting invites accepted, and like your whole day revolves around meetings, then you might actually need a really good calendar. I don't have a lot of meetings, and those meetings I have are mainly in my day job where we have to use a set of applications. So when I'm talking about my productivity journey, I'm only talking about the applications I choose for myself. Like, I don't really want to use Microsoft Whiteboard, but I have to at work. And figuring all of these things out and like taking the time to do the research necessary to be like, I know what I need from my productivity system, and not only what I need, what I want from my productivity system makes it a lot easier. I feel a lot more confident now in like my tools than I did 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago. And I also feel much more confident in the fact that I won't be changing applications unless, of course, the applications shut down, which has also happened to me a couple of times in this journey. So I had Pocket as a read it later applications. Pocket has decided to shut down. I used Rise Calendar and I really liked the Rise Calendar, but that one also shut down. I tried Flow. That one didn't shut down, but it is blocked on my work Wi-Fi, which is super annoying. I actually really wanted to use that application. It costs $25 each month, but it is like an email agent and a task management and calendar application. But if it's blocked on my work Wi-Fi, like it isn't possible to use it. As I said, my task management tool is mainly for work stuff. But I also decided to have multiple different applications, and one of the issues I've had, which I recently figured out, was that when I've used multiple different applications, my biggest problem has been the fact that I don't know where to put something. Like, I don't know where things go, so I end up just abandoning the whole system. But this time I've been really strict and created rules around what goes where. So, for example, I'm using Tooz as a bullet journal application, and um, that means that I only go in after the fact. So after a day is done, I go in and I write all of the things I've done. I don't use it as like a tool where I write what I'm going to do tomorrow. Just an example. I've also decided to have an inspiration application because I do a lot of like design work and things like that. And just being able to have all of your inspiration in one place, away from your notes where you kind of work inside of your notes, because inside of my note-taking app I do work, I connect things together. I can be inspired in there by the connections, but I don't go there as my first place to like find inspiration about an idea. I really like having a separate place, like a common place book. That is also one thing I figured out. Like, if you go back in time and see how people use notebooks, they would have different notebooks for different things. And I think the same way, at least a little, about applications. I want different applications for different things. So that has also been something I've added to my system. I tried MyMind. It didn't quite work out, mainly because it did not have the Readwise integration. So it took too long to put things inside of MyMind. But honestly, I think MyMind is one of my favorite applications. It's probably the most beautiful application I have tested out. I will do a video on all of the applications I'm using and how I'm using them. That is coming quite soon. I'm trying to film it next week. Today is June 26th. So probably a week or two from now, you will see that video, I hope. Um, but I just wanted to talk about how I've gone ahead and done this. And my experience is a little different because I have the ability to use many applications without having to overpay, because I've gotten gifted like lifetime subscriptions or yearly subscriptions. It is actually mainly lifetime subscriptions, because I've done video on applications and they've reached out and I've said yes, because it is much easier to have those subscriptions whenever I want to make a video on an application instead of having to pay every time, because that gets really expensive when you film 5 YouTube videos each week. So I accept them, and I'm lucky enough to like get them and use them, so I have the ability to use multiple different applications like this. Not everyone has that, so that is also something to keep in mind. But my main point here is to actually test out and like test run your applications. It also gives you the ability to get yourself or to get to know yourself a lot better, which I think like nothing is more important than that. But I think that concludes it for this podcast episode. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you for either watching or listening to today's podcast episode.